Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and that makes this the first ever episode 41 of Cloud Control. And man, it's been a crazy day. Dallas Stars one win away from advancing to the Final Four. I'm hyped up on that. We just talked about the first episode of Invincible, which I just watched the other day. Man, what a show. I'm in a good place, Kate. How are you?
A good place too, because you just told me your predictions for the rest of the season of Invincible, which I have watched. And it's really fun when something that's a great mystery and a really shocking, twisty path is undertaken by someone that you can live it vicariously a second time through.
Man, it's like we always go back to Lost. It's the perfect example of something like that, where there's like, what could happen in the story? Who the hell knows? But Invincible has me feeling like I need to have that same level of satisfaction to see what happens next when I watch next. Yeah.
Unlike Lost, you will be satisfied by the ending.
Well, Lost is more about the journey, not the destination. So,
Exactly.
That's what we can say about that. Kate, this is not a TV podcast, though. This is a video game podcast. So today we have a big episode planned about Diablo IV, which we got to play a little bit of couch co-op on when you were visiting me the other week. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we're ending the show off with one of our favorite games today to play, which is Good Listening. The show returns. I will be quizzing Kate on some musical songs from games she has played to see if she can recognize where they are from. But before we talk about either of those topics, we may have played a second game couch co-op, and we're going to lead the show off with a little discussion on N64 Hidden Gem, the classic Iggy's Reckin Balls, which we played, a solid 25 minutes of or so, maybe half an hour when we were hanging out the other day. And man, we rented this game from the video store, probably multiple, I want to say 10 or 15 times over the time we had N64 growing up. And I don't know if I really understand why after playing it. It's not terrible. It's fine. Kate, what do you have to say about Iggy's Reckin Balls?
I've never had an experience before where I remember something as if it's a fever dream. It's so bizarre in my memory. And then I experienced it a second time and it's somehow accurate. And usually with those things, they're never exactly quite as you remember, being as weird as you remember. But this was exactly to almost to a T what I remember playing as Iggy's Wrecking Balls. And it's okay. It's definitely not good, but it's not horrible either. It's firmly okay.
I think I was pleasantly surprised with how, like you say, it definitely wasn't good. I wouldn't be like, hey guys, you got to come over. We're playing Iggy tonight. Who's in? I would never be doing that, but I definitely expected it to be way jankier than it was. It's for those that have never seen it, it's kind of like a side-scrolling racing game, kind of where you're these little bouncing ball creatures. They have grappling hooks. You can kind of go up and down platforms and swing into each other and this kind of thing. And it, the concept is fine. If it was a $5 indie these days, I could see someone ripping it off, but that's kind of what it is.
The thing is, I feel like it's got a lot of potential, and I've never seen another game do anything like it, and maybe for good reason, but it's unique in that a lot of the race is vertical, and you're on flat platforms, and instead of just going left and right, you're typically scaling some kind of tower and doing so with your grappling hook to reach the next platform. And so that's kind of unique, and I feel like there's potential for that to maybe be an interesting game. And like you said, $5 indie title, that could be kind of fun to play with your friends, but unfortunately it's just that it hasn't aged particularly well. A lot of the stages aren't particularly interesting. It's kind of just climb up a tower every time.
It's very psychedelic and kind of a mishmash. There's checkers here and there, then all of a sudden things are grass, and then there's kind of, it's very all over the place in terms of its aesthetics. I think it's what it's going for.
It's kind of that sort of style in the 90s where some things were just ugly intentionally. That was the style, was to just be sort of repulsive. Just think of like if everything was like a Wario version of itself and just to be like unpleasant. Like one of the characters you can play it is just this like big mouth with like massive teeth and like it's horrible. And like everyone has just like the most unpleasant like massive lips and like it's
That's
it's just
true. That's true.
it's just uncomfortable to look at a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely that like 90s gross, like, whoa, look at us, there's
Yeah.
snot, like those kind of
Yeah,
vibes, Yeah.
it's unpleasant for
Yeah.
sure. But I think with a good aesthetic and controls that felt good and maybe if they utilize the grapple to give you more things that you want to like swing to and there was like a good physics engine to it, like I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of potential for a game like that.
I agree. That's the one thing I was gonna say. Like, if you modernize this, you'd have to have like a really fun sort of physics swinging system where people could speed run, and work with like, oh, if this platform, if it's moving up, you can swing in this particular way and get all this momentum and whatnot. Obviously, that didn't exist back in 1998, so I mean, we can't really. It's not Iggy's fault, but I guess that's where it would have to go. Yeah. The one thing about this game that we didn't really check out, and I mean, I'm sure it's not amazing, but it's definitely is one of those like they're going for the Mario Party type of audience. They had the 4-player co-op. There's along with the races, you can kind of go into a battle mode where you have like balloon lives similar to Mario Kart. And you had to collect power-ups and attack each other. That was very confusing when we did it. It really didn't explain anything about what you were collecting or doing or anything like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was pretty confusing, but I appreciate the fact that they were going for all these different. It's like that game. What's that game on Xbox? The original Xbox when oh man, Fusion Frenzy. It's like another one of these games, like mini game compilations, like party game kind of thing. I don't know. Those kinds of games are kind of nostalgic to this era, I think,
Yeah.
of like the four
Yeah,
player thing. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if
I
Iggy's the
agree.
best example.
I agree. I think Iggy is an idea, and then
Iggy
they
is a
made it
vibe.
progressively well. Iggy is a concept more than a game. But it's kind of cool. It's one of those things that like the Nintendo Switch Online is not something that I think I feel is worthwhile to pay for, but I really do love how they're adding these like classic collections of games on there because like it's the kind of thing where like I had such a good time playing half an hour of Iggy's Wrecking Balls and I never want to do it again. But it's cool that this is becoming accessible again because like where the hell would you ever find that game to play it otherwise or like why would you ever even think about it? And then it's nice to kind of be able to like relive this sort of stuff, so like credit to Nintendo for like putting that on the platform now and like picking like weird like offshoot random games and not just like the couple like popular ones.
Yeah, true enough. That's a good point. The I guess all I'd say is Nintendo, you got to keep it on there now. Don't take it
Yeah,
away from like otherwise people are
yeah.
gonna pirate it. Of course, lots of pirates for Iggy's Wrecking Balls out there. Big
Well, I
online
mean that's the thing,
competitive
right?
scene, obviously.
Well, that's yeah, I guess sure. That's the thing is I'm there's those illegal Iggy's tournaments every Friday night, but
Project M and then Iggy's Wrecking Balls. Yeah, back to back.
yeah, I'm not surprised Nintendo doesn't cease and desisted them yet because like the prize pool for those wrecking balls.
Oh man. Okay, well, we've done like 6 or 7 minutes on Iggy's Wrecking Balls now. I think I'm out of notes on that one. I don't know about you. But let's talk about something else we played. Like I mentioned, Diablo 4. And this was so out of the blue. I was kind of just like, man, I'm really craving a game where you kind of get to collect loot and level up some characters, just like grind out some experience, get those skill points. And then it was a little bit before you were coming to town to visit. And I was like, hey, do you want to play Diablo 4? We can start at couch co-op, then continue online after. And you're like, yes, let's do it. And so we
Mhm.
did. And I don't know how much Diablo you'd played before. I'd played a little bit of 3. But this game is like, I really enjoyed what we played. And I think just my first thing I want to say is like, I really enjoyed it because I think we played it. Something about being couch co-op with controller, very fun compared to like sitting at your computer and clicking and doing hotkeys. Like it just feels way more one-to-one playing it in that style. And I thought this game was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I agree. There's something about these kind of style games and like MMOs and stuff, and like having all your abilities on like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like I don't know, something about that just like doesn't appeal to me in like a tangible, like mechanical way. But playing on the controller definitely felt a little bit more like an action game and a little bit more of how quickly and like in what order do I press my hotkeys kind of an experience. So I agree that the couch co-op was nice for that. I mean, obviously you can have a controller at your computer as well for online, but the couch co-op's nice. And I mean, every single game is better in person than to play online. Like that's just a fact. I'm sure there's one
Except for
game
We
that
Were Here Together. Bad split screen
okay,
game.
sure. But I mean, if you were in the same room and just not like,
Yeah.
looking, if you were like back to back in the same room, I think that would still be better. So there's definitely the social element, but like, yeah, it worked really well. I was surprised by how like uncluttered and like visually clear the screen was a lot of the time, especially in a couch co-op when like everything is happening in one space and you don't have like the split screen if you're kind of like off doing your own thing.
Yeah, especially when you think about how many skills were. I mean, by the time we got to the level we ended up, I don't know what level it was, but we were pretty far into the skill tree. You know, we're both doing a bunch of skills all around. There's sometimes like multiple enemies, and yet it is relatively easy to keep track of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed it. This is not normally my kind of game as well, but I think there's a lot of games that fall under my wouldn't play alone, but really like in co-op sort of space, and this would be one of them. But I was pretty impressed. I think the biggest thing for me in Diablo is I just love the setting. Like and I've played a little bit of Diablo 1 and like it was a cool setting, but it was ugly because it was like old and not visually clear because just I'm sure people really love it for nostalgic reasons and that like old school aesthetic, but like this just looks so good in comparison, and like everything's like creepy demons and like the hordes of like foul beasts and
Yeah, it's like a very dead, decrepit, sort of gothic
yeah,
horror sort of
yeah,
tone to it. You
kind of
know, what's her name?
demonic and
Lilith
like
comes up and she looks
yeah,
so cool coming out of that
she's
initial
so cool.
cutscene. Her cape
Yeah,
is
she
like
comes
her
out.
own blood, and it's like, you know, shattering
Yeah,
around her, whatever, as
and
it
she's like sort of
hardens.
still stuck in it, and then she like takes it off, and she's like the girl from Metal Hellsinger, who's super cool too. I think you made that comparison, and it's very accurate. That it's like just like this satanic demony sort of thing,
Yeah.
and then it's set in some kind of like Eastern European kind of like town,
Like
and
a witch hunter. You know what it really reminds me of the vibes of actually is the Castlevania TV show, where it's sort of these
yeah.
villages that are sort of strewn about this hellscape that's kind of getting worse and worse by the day and overrun by these undead demons. And then you're an adventurer going out there to cleanse the world and find all the loot and all that. And like it's very similar to that Castlevania storyline.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably the best comparison I have, and definitely like my favorite thing about that show and universe as well is just the aesthetic. Um, but of course, like you said, we're adventurers, and I think you should explain the majesty of our adventures because we I think we're the best two characters that you could possibly be in Diablo.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's great. And yeah, so our characters, of course. So I'm playing the druid and Kate is the barbarian. And together we are the two tankiest characters around. You know,
Yeah,
there
we're
was
the
some
two
lighter
big
options,
kinky boys.
but we
Yeah.
are defensive as hell and we're just out here bludgeoning people to death. You know, my guy's name is Pockets. Pockets the druid. Kate is Krat the barbarian. Names, maybe we'll discuss the origin of those names later on another show.
Yeah.
But for now, all you need to know is Krat and Pockets do not get messed with out here in the wastelands. We're out here.
No.
It's awesome. But I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed playing the druid though. Like for as funny as kind of we're making this inner narrative, you know, which is such a fun part of these sort of games. But I found the druid to be very fun. Like I played a bit of the wizard before, and I was kind of just shooting all the lasers, but and you know, ranged attack. But with the druid, it's cool. You know, I have like a pet that goes through the ground and poisons people, and I can do this like transformation into a bear and bite people to poison them. I got lightning coming from the sky. You know, it's fun to have that type of variety, and it's fun to see how my skills then match up with the points that you're putting into your character. And it's like, well, there's a synergy here, you know, because if you stun a guy and then I'm able to hit him while he's stunned, maybe I do some more damage or knock him back or something. And it's almost like a game like Hades where you're trying to build your character and get all those combinations, but in this you're just doing it as a team. And I think that's always one of the most fun aspects of games like this. It's like the character synergies and on all those types of cooperative aspects.
exactly. And it seems like there's a decent amount of like flexibility in each character as well, so you can kind of like fit them into different roles that you may want at the time. And also they do a good job of letting you like respec all of your abilities, so you can not only like decide that maybe your team needs to be a bit more defensive, and so you could adjust for that, but also like it's just kind of fun to try different things as you go as well. And like the barbarian especially, like his the kind of unique thing about that class is that like depending on what weapon you're using, or like you're like you have different skills for different types of weapons, and so part of the idea is like maybe to swap around weapons and thus like swapping around your skills. And so it's like really easy to do that, and then when you get you get like a really rare drop of a weapon and you're like, oh cool, this is great, like you actually can like swap your skills to make sure that you use it, which is really nice, as opposed to like, oh well, I got this like super great legendary gold two-handed sword, but I spec'd into dual wielding, so I guess I'll just throw it in the garbage forever.
Yeah,
uh,
that's a great point though, right? Because the game is so I don't think the way we're playing it, we're overly focused on loot compared to a lot of players, but you know, such a draw of these games is that I'm
mhm.
grinding for a certain weapon and I want to get this high roll on it, and
Yeah.
I want to get the best loot, and like you say, like the flexibility of being able to build your character around the loot versus the other way around is really
Yeah,
like beneficial for the player.
exactly. And like you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of different like layers to it, but it's nice that it's accessible at different levels. Like there's obviously a lot of post-game content and like a lot of like, like optimizing, and I'm sure people have done the math, like this is objectively the best way to build this character just in a pure like numbers based game. But there's also a lot of people that, the world is cool, the story seems interesting. I'm not interested in like late game dungeons and all that like high level content, but I want to go through the story and I want to build a character that I think is fun and cool. And it's nice that they allow you to do that, because a lot of games I think don't, or at least they like penalize you if you want to change. And so far this is just pretty like free and open and kind of doing whatever you want,
Hmm.
which is really
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. And speaking too about doing whatever you want, I think that's one of the funnest aspects that we had was just exploring the map, and really like you do get
mhm.
given objectives. Like there are main storylines and we're trying to complete them, but I mean, you can't walk two steps without something happening, or like a horde of guys bursts out here, or there's a random event, or like something will happen for the seasonal event that's happening and a real person will show up and fight with us against something that's happening, or you run into a quest or a mini dungeon, or like there's just so much that
Mhm.
happens along the way, and it's almost one of those like you before you get to your original destination you do like 10 things on the way and never actually get there.
Yes, it is like the weirdest concept of time, because it's one of those just like constant, okay, one more little thing, because none of like the objectives or like the little things you run into take that long of a time, but like you're just constantly like stop, start, and like running into new things. And I think there was one night we were playing it, we are like, okay, we'll just play like a couple hours and then go to bed, and then it was like so late somehow. And I think like that like passage of time is weird when you're just constantly like doing small objectives, and then like you never actually make it to your big objective, and it's like, okay, well we crossed like two things off of our list, but we played for 4 hours.
Yeah,
And yeah, but it's yeah, I think that maybe that's dangerous.
I
But
think so
it
too, but
is fun at the same time.
it definitely puts you into that flow state, and you do
Yeah.
kind of lose track of time, because sometimes you enter one of those dungeons and it literally is like one room, and you just kill a bunch
Yeah.
of enemies and there's sort of an enemy a boss there, and you get some loot and you leave, and then the next time you're actually in a fairly sizable castle, but like you have to complete it before you can't just leave, like you have to complete it, and then you
Hmm.
go and that happened to us because we were trying to get to the top of the map to do like a class specific quest for my character, which is also another cool thing about, I think, the way the world is set up, is there actually seems to be, along with the main storyline, there's sort of, I don't know if it's a class character like quest line or if it's just one sort of objective when you get to a certain level. But it was cool, like we both did the quest. It was sort of with other druids, and then at the end of it, I actually unlocked like a new menu with new skill points that could go into like leveling up these spirit animal kind of stats. I don't, it's not like it's a huge game breaking mechanic or anything like that, but the fact that they're doing kind of bespoke quests and little activities for each class is is a nice touch, I think. And it's kind of been, that's a huge incentive. Like, we're just trying to go through the story, but at the same time, it's like, well, we got to find the barbarian one now. Like, what are you going to get?
It's like just feels that little bit like touch extra more personal, and so like you definitely want to do it. And yeah, I'm impressed by like not only are there a lot of like options, but a lot of them are like tangible with like gameplay consideration, less upgrades that are just like have 5% more health, like, and like that's helpful, but it's not very exciting to pick that kind of an upgrade. But doing a little quest that lets you take a spirit animal that gives you some kind of passive effect is much more engaging and interesting as a way to like have your character feel like they're growing, as opposed to, I have more health, but maybe in this area enemies do 5% more damage and it doesn't tangibly feel different at all. So I think that's really cool. I think as well, the abilities, especially in the druid, is what I've noticed. I think when I played it Diablo originally, back, it might have been, it was either 1 or 2. I think it was 1. And I played like a druid, and I summoned a lot of things. I had like 5 crows and like 6 spiders and 2 wolves, and it was really cool. I had this massive army of animals, but that was all my skills did, was summon the thing, and then they would just fight, and I'd be standing there like, hooray.
Yeah, just like dodging things in the background,
just
basically.
kind of like waiting, and then like, okay, a dog has died, I'll get a new dog out. And it didn't feel as like interactive in terms, it felt good thematically, but it didn't feel good necessarily in terms of like tangible gameplay moments. But I've noticed the druid is really cool, and all your skills have kind of like a summon, and it creates that creature, but then also it has a second ability, so if that creature is already out, then it does something else. And so you're still like actively playing a character in addition to having all of those summons.
Mm-hmm.
And then my character, the barbarian, is cool, and I picked it because I normally never ever pick like tanky sort of like frontliney characters. Like, I would pick the necromancer 9 out of 10 times, and then the other time I would pick like the druid or something, maybe a sorcerer. Like, it's just not my archetype at all. But I wanted to take something different and have a different experience, so I picked the barbarian. And it's really cool. And like, your skills, instead of having like mana, you sort of like build up the currency to use skills by attacking. And so you're sort of like first step to every single fight is just charge in and then be like in the middle of all the chaos, and then you like get to decide how you use your skills based on how you're fighting, which is kind of cool. And so it's a lot more, on both of our characters, more interactive than I would have expected from a game like this. And I'm really enjoying like how kind of more like, yeah, I guess just like active that the combat feels.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. And it's interesting because like, you played the barbarian before, or the druid before. I played like the wizard, like I said earlier. And I found like when I was playing that character, the thing that I didn't like is you're just standing stationary and you're shooting a laser and you're kind of like spinning like a turret, you know, and you're not really moving, or you're not very active. And I wonder now, like, you're right, you make good points about the way the characters are more interactive like that. And I wonder what the wizard would look like in this game with those more modern sensibilities. Like, would they behave differently? Would the laser like be able to shoot while moving? I don't know. Like, how did they rework it? Did they rework it? It's very interesting. It is tempting to like think about those other classes in this game and be like, oh, I wonder if I just get on there and hop in. Like, you know, might I like these skills better? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like, in theory, you could just make another character and like hop in, but like,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of committed to.
No, I'm not changing. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But the
How far
game
do you go
does
down
make
the
it,
rabbit hole?
Yeah, the game does make it easy to do that though. Like, I'm fairly certain that on online co-op, or when you're playing with other people, if you're at even like large level disparities, the game is able to sort of balance it out so you can still play together. You'll just have less moves if you're lower level, but in terms of like health and survivability, it kind of scales it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really nice for a
important.
game like this. This is the kind of game, I think, where if you got into a pretty competitive group, like, you would just be, you know, left behind by your squad if you didn't keep up to your like armor score or whatever it is, you know, and that would be just very difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Unless
I
you're
was in
right. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I would say, even like, you're not necessarily playing competitively, but if you're just playing like casually, but it's the kind of game like your friend would get addicted to, and then they'd play without you a couple times.
I've been there. And then it's like, well, now I don't want to spend my time by myself catching up. You played for like 4 hours.
Yeah, and then you'd never play again because they played without you one time. But now I guess you can still be mad at your friend because why are you playing without me? But you can have that argument while playing Diablo still, and that's cool.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I guess another thing I wanted to bring up was I wanted to talk about sort of the loot system and the menus a little bit, because I was thinking about this earlier today. I was like, what do I think about the menu and sort of the navigation of it? Because let's face it, like this game has a lot jammed in there. You have so much equipment you're picking up all the time. You have other items like consumables. You're tabbing over to the actual equipment you're wearing, which by the way is great because it actually changes the appearance of your character, which is something I always appreciate in the game. It's always so funny to get a hilarious, you're trying to convince me to wear this dumb looking jacket and I'm not going to put it
Yeah.
on.
So we got, I think it was like one of the seasonal rewards or something. It was like the first thing on like the free battle pass. And it's this like funny like vacation bright yellow shirt. And like we're just two like massive beefy guys and we're wearing like like leather belts and
Yeah, I've got like
like
a big robe and
medievally
like,
like
yeah,
yeah,
a fur
like big
lined like top around my jacket or
yeah,
whatever right now.
I've got like a steel helmet and like some like Kratos kind of like skirts and battle belts and things, and it's like let's both wear this dumb yellow shirt, and it looks so funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Honestly, it does.
yeah.
But I mean, in general, like with the amount of things you're managing, I find that the equipment is actually, they do like a really good job of letting you sort of sift through it, because the vast majority of what you pick up is really just trash to you. Like you're going to sell it for money or break it down for crafting components and whatnot. And the game is, it does a very good job, especially considering we didn't have mice of like, okay, you can permanently mark this one as trash. You can push one button to sort it by the rarity or sort it by, I think there's probably a few different filters. And when you get to the store, you can kind of easily select like break it all down, and you can, or you can, break down only certain ones selected as junk. I think these are things that seem very simple on the surface, but these are things that other games screw up, and then we point those things out and complain about how terrible the inventory is. I think about a game like the original Mass Effect. I know it's like way older, but like it's very similar in like without those kind of functions. And like this is, in my opinion, like really good design in the sense that it works so well that you don't really notice that how easy it is.
Yeah, I agree. A game like Mass Effect made me want to cry whenever I had to do inventory management. Like I would put it off and then it would be like my inventory would be full and like fine. And then you go through it and you just want to like throw like I've never ever raged in a game and thrown a controller, but if someone did that during Mass Effect, I would understand completely. Like it's atrocious. Um, but I think like the big thing too is like this is so clear to show you what you currently have and then what you would be equipping if you were to take like the new thing you just got, and like that's pretty standard now. So like maybe the new Mass Effects also do it, but it's always very clear in like what you want to keep. And there's a lot of options, but the options aren't so vast that it isn't easy to tell. Like if I have like this shirt compared to the other shirt, and like that's easy to compare, and like the weapons are like organized well enough that it's like this weapon archetype versus this weapon archetype, and I'm not looking between like 30 different types of swords. It's just sword competes with sword, and that's fine. That's simple and easy. But then some of them are interesting that they'll have like a interesting stat breakdowns that like maybe that makes it more appealing, but it's pretty clear, and it's clear about like what all the different stats do more so than other games. Like sometimes you play a game and you're like, what exactly does like the resistance
Yeah,
stat
what is
do?
my constitution? Like, what the
Yeah,
hell?
it's like, what exactly does that mean? But this is like it's pretty clear, the information is all there, it's easy to navigate. So yeah, I think that's good. I think also there's an element of like your inventory is only so big, which on one hand could be annoying, but on the other hand, what it means is that you're constantly doing small inventory management sessions instead of one massive one that takes you 20 minutes.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I think this version is better, especially because it's really easy to just teleport to a shop and then like teleport back to where you were. So it's like really accessible in that way where you're not just like lugging like a million things around, and then when you finally get to a town it's like okay, someone goes to make dinner and the other person like sells all the all the junk, and Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. You make a great point too there. Like the fact that they let you teleport back instantaneously,
Yeah.
it's like there's really no downside to the system they have. I think you're right. If they made the bag expandable, and maybe you can expand it a little bit as we go, who knows? But it would
Mhm.
definitely become way more of a chore at that point. And honestly, like by no means are we making super builds or like we don't know really what we're picking. But at the end of the day, like when you find something that's better, like easily better than what you have, and the rest of it really just becomes like, okay, it's all just trash. Like you're not really thinking that hard and deep about most of what you find, right? So I think it's very doable. I think the part where I get confused with this game is when it comes to like navigating all the seasonal content and the different like online modes and different things that are coming up. And I don't know if that's just a symptom of, I don't play a lot of games that have this sort of format. I guess I've been playing Helldivers is kind of similar, but you know what I mean? Like live action, like live service kind of these games with the different passes. And then there's also probably some Diablo lingo in there, like, what's an Inferno pass, or I just made that up, but it could be a thing. Like I found
Yeah.
that part almost like, I wouldn't say it's as confusing as the inventory is good, but I definitely don't feel as someone who has never really onboarded into this before. I don't really feel like I understood exactly what I was creating when I was like, oh, do I want to be part of this season or not? Like I mean, I guess, but like what is it,
Yeah, so that's kind of like the maybe the dark area of playing Diablo because we're playing on Game Pass, so we haven't invested any money into Diablo. I guess we invested money into Game Pass, but I don't know if either of
Not
us
directly,
consider
yeah.
Diablo as part of why we made that purchase. But yeah, Blizzard has sort of not been known recently for being the best at their monetization, nor necessarily the best at caring about how that affects their players. Um, I didn't participate in the poll of how much money would you be willing to pay for this DLC that they put out in the attempt to see how much money they could justify charging for it. And obviously, they just picked the highest price instead of, just putting the DLC at what it was valued at. um, so yeah, that part I will say that I think that that part is easy to not interact with when you're playing the game. And so that's good. It doesn't have like a big shock that opens when you open the game. And so it's easy to be like a free to play user. But definitely it has that kind of element when you get into the shop section of being confusing and hard to navigate. And maybe that's on purpose a little bit. Hard to say, but maybe.
Well, it's definitely not. Yeah, I'm sure it's not a
Yeah.
huge priority because it's right. Like you kind of go in there and you're like, okay, this cost this much, this cost this much, and you're not really sure ultimately like what it's for. Or I mean, I didn't look super hard. You
Yeah.
gotta admit, but
Some
like,
of it was like really expensive too. I think we
yeah,
looked at the cosmetics for like each class had a few different like cool like armor sets that you could buy, and I think it was just cosmetic to go on top of whatever you had found in the game, and they were like really incredibly cool.
it's like
But they
almost
were
the
also
price of the
like
game sometimes.
yeah, they were also like outrageously expensive for just like one cosmetic.
I know it's such a
Yeah.
I mean, we could go on a whole like episode segment about this, but it's just like the monetization of all these games. Like even like Marvel Snap, you log in there and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you can get this variant and like some currency and some gold, and it's like $59.99. I'm like, hold on a
Yeah.
minute, what? $59.99? Like that's like a full
It's like
price game.
genuinely the price. Yeah, it's like genuinely the price of games, if not like more sometimes for like not really that much
It's like a
value. And
cosmetic, and the game's gonna get shut down one day. Once it doesn't make
yeah,
enough money for them, like you'll just have gotten nothing for it. I don't know. That sucks. Anyway, back to Diablo. Yeah, I mean, what else? What else did you want to say about it? I'm very pleased with our time so far. Krat and Pockets have will return shortly. I think we're going to play
I,
later this week.
Crown Pockets will continue, absolutely. I'm curious to see the feel of it online because we haven't played online yet, so I'm curious to see how that feels, and if it gets a little bit more chaotic because it was very easily contained couch co-op. But I know the difference of playing something like a a Larian Studios game couch co-op versus online feels very different.
Yeah.
And
Well, and for me, I'm wondering like, because we're locked on the same screen when
yeah,
we're together, but is it possible like, oh, one of us ran off in the wrong direction by accident, and we both aggroed a bunch of enemies, and now we're getting
I
swarmed by more,
I really hope that it does the teleport thing, and I'm just like going over to like open a barrel, and suddenly pockets like this massive druid just teleports onto me. I think that's good. Also, pick the druid if you play Diablo because every cutscene he's in, he just looks so incredibly funny and out of place.
I'm very
He's
happy with picking him so far.
he's
Great
like
guy.
riding his horse at the beginning, and he's like way too big to be on a horse.
Oh my god,
Mhm.
good times. Yeah,
Mhm.
and also one last thing, shout out to the HUD itself during the gameplay. I just
Yeah.
love
Oh
those
my god, yeah.
those like health and mana orbs. The way they kind
Yeah.
of they look like they're full of that sparkly magic liquid, and
Yeah,
they're
you just wanna
so
drink
pleasing to
them.
look at. They're very cool. I think Diablo would be a great game to play in VR. Like even if the game itself was still projected in front of you, but you could see like those orbs and how much health you had like physically in the room with you, and you could see your whole cooldown thing.
That
Like
would
that would be
be
awesome.
so incredibly cool. Like, I wish I was into Diablo enough to, like, get Diablo memorabilia, because you just have, like, one of those, and I would, like,
Oh
drink out of
man.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, they're super cool. It's definitely got a style, and, like, that is such a cool part of Diablo.
Agreed. Speaking of the style, do you like are you following the story? Is this something you care about so far since we've been playing? Like, because for me, like I
I
don't know, I like the vibe of it. I like the tone. I like the character designs, but
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you really what's going on.
This feels like the kind of game where if we weren't playing together, I would read carefully every single line of dialogue and then like maybe get burnt out of doing side quests and like all the side content. But because like we're kind of like going through it a little bit more rapidly, um, I'm maybe that's gonna end up being a positive thing. I think the main storyline seems pretty cool. Like it's very Castlevania, like you said. And some of the characters are kind of interesting so far, like that old guy that's helping us out. And I just keep thinking like Decker Kane's gonna show up in any second because he's the one guy I know.
Yeah, me
um,
too.
so yeah, like I know Diablo's got like known for pretty cool lore, so I think that's definitely an area of the game that we're not digging into as much as we could, and I think that would maybe be like a positive element, but I also think that it works to not do that, like accepting that the barbarian class, I've also accepted the like just play and have fun mentality.
No, for
So
sure.
it's a good social experiment for me if nothing else.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a struggle these type of games have, though, right? Like, it's inherently more fun to play multiplayer in a game like this. I don't think many people would argue that. But then inherently playing with other people does detract from your ability to engage with all the dialogue and listen to all the character voices and read all the stuff, unless you're playing with like a very specific group that really, really wants to do that. But it is kind of,
Yep.
they're disparate things when it comes
And
down to like the game design.
and that's why I haven't finished Baldur's Gate 3 yet. Because, yeah, exactly that reason, but like times a million because there's like more lines of dialogue than like, I don't know, the amount of books that I would read in 5 years,
Yeah. Oh
which
my god, it's
is
crazy.
a lot of books.
Shout
But
out to
yeah,
the Baldur's Gate 3 writing team. My
yeah,
god.
it's fucking impressive. Oh my god, you guys are, yeah, game of the year. You should win game of the year this year again too, just because one isn't enough.
All right, well, speaking of one not being enough, Kate, how about the number five? How about five songs to end off today's show? It's time for good listening. Everyone's favorite podcast musical game show is coming back for I don't know, for its return. Who knows how many times we've done this, but it's my turn today to give Kate a nice little musical quiz. So for those of you who have never played along before, you can play along with us too. You can email us your results at cloudcontrolpod@proton.me, or get in touch with us anywhere. Our links are all in the description or show notes, wherever you're watching. Thank you very much. But on this game show, we are going to play a series of 5 different songs from video games that Kate has played before. And you're going to tell me, Kate, what game each of these songs is from. And for a bonus point, if you can tell me like the name of the song or where you would see it in the game, I guess you can get a bonus point. How does that sound?
I think this sounds good. Fantastic. I want to just correct one thing that you said, in which you said one is not enough. And in fact, one is enough because I will be pleased if I just get even one correct. That is my goal.
Yeah. Traditionally, we don't do very well on this, even though in retrospect, you kind of kill yourself. You're like, I know this song. I've heard this so many times.
Yeah. Well, we were speaking it earlier before the show, and I was saying that like I always think these are so familiar, and I can even like continue the song in my head, but it's that placing of where it comes from that is the barrier. So
yeah,
we'll see. Hopefully, these are games I've played in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, not games I played 25 years ago. Like sometimes they are.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. The only
see.
hint I will give you before we start is I'm going to call this round the difficulty sandwich. Okay. So in theory, the way that I've made this, it should be the first and the last song I think will be probably quite difficult. And the middle three, I think you could get if you really put your thinking cap on. That's all I'll say. Okay.
But don't get disheartened.
All right. Well, let's see how we do. Let's listen along. Each of these songs are going to be about 30 seconds long or so. Let's listen to song number 1. Okay.
Okay, so I felt like I was getting it, and then there were lyrics, and I was not expecting that because my mind was going to Maple Story. Like like that was very like Hennessy kind of feel to me.
Yep.
But there wouldn't be lyrics in a Maple Story song, I don't think. So that has completely put me off how I was feeling. And the other thing I thought it was Animal Crossing, which also wouldn't have lyrics, I don't think. Unless it was like a Cake and Slider song, but I don't think that's what it was. So, God, I have no idea. It's a little Pokemon-y too. Like, it's not Pokemon. No, it's definitely not Pokemon.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to ask me a few hints. I could give you a few easy clues. I don't know how you're feeling about testing yourself so seriously.
It's so familiar as the worst part. I'm gonna say it's Mario Party.
Mario Party.
I think it's Mario Party, and the talking could be like when you like start the game and like the menu always like kind of explains itself to you, and then the noises would be like navigating the menu. Like if you click on something, it's like, and yeah, I think it could be Mario Party-esque.
Okay, final answer.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say which one, but one of them.
Okay. Well, sadly, you are wrong. It is a Nintendo game, though.
Okay.
This is actually the title screen song from Wario Land 4.
Oh my god!
I know that's kind of obscure, but I thought it was
so obscure.
I thought it was maybe fair, only because you played a lot of it when we were younger, and the voices that come in the lyrics are very similar to the voices you kind of hear in WarioWare micro games or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe if that song was kind of hit a chord with you, and then you heard the voices, maybe you'd think Wario.
True. Okay, well, maybe I was thinking I was playing Wario in Mario Party.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, well, like I said, it's a difficulty sandwich, so let's hope you can do better on the next one. Let's listen to song number 2.
Okay, so this is From Software, and I feel it in my bones, 100% confidence. This is a From Software game, and I initially thought Dark Souls, but now I've second guessed myself. It's not Elden Ring. I'm confident that it's not Elden Ring. It could be Bloodborne, but you know what it is? It's that like initial, the sound in the beginning, where it like, Yeah. Oh, the like
Like the
little
symbol
bell
of
at
the
the
star, it's
start.
like,
The little bell.
yeah. Hmm.
Oh, okay. Is it Bloodborne or is it Dark Souls? Oh no. I'm
You're
gonna
also
be
gonna, if you're
so
gonna go with Dark Souls, you also have to give me which one, because you're the
bad.
self-proclaimed expert on everything. So,
Yeah, it would be 1 or 3 for
uh-huh.
sure. But I don't know, the choir is kind of like Bloodborne-y too. I feel like I should know. I feel like if I'm not 100% sure and it's Bloodborne, I'm gonna like kick myself
No,
because
this
like
is
that's
hard. This
something
is
I
hard.
should know. Um, I think it's the first Dark Souls. That's what I'll go with.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Okay, man, I love listening to you kind of detective your way through these. Oh, you're
Yeah.
so painfully close, Kate. This is the main theme from Dark Souls 3.
Oh, Dark Souls 3. Ah.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. I can live with that. I can live with that. I had the franchise correct and they would be quite
You did
similar.
very well. I'm willing to give you half a
Um,
point for that, I think, because, like,
okay.
you know, I'll give you
Yeah.
half a point. You were pretty close.
Yeah. Okay. I know Elden Ring's the most familiar, and then Bloodborne
Hmm.
is a little bit
Well,
different
you
as
know,
well, and then the Dark Souls will kind of sound the same.
yeah, I was
Um,
gonna pick Dark Souls 2, but I know that's the one you played the least, so I thought I'd throw you just a little bit of a bone and throw you
yeah.
the game that I think you'd played the second least. So,
Yeah, that's actually technically true, yes.
so there you go.
Okay, I feel
Okay,
good. I feel
we're
good
gonna
now.
reach the
That's all
halfway
I
point.
needed.
We're gonna reach the halfway point. This
Okay.
is the one I'm gonna say right now that I'm most interested to see what you think it is. So let's
Okay.
get to song number 3.
It is interesting because it
Mm,
started quite like triumphantly, and then with the violin in the middle, it went a little bit darker. And so I'm thinking it's got to be something that has a little bit more of like a serious tone, but it's still in that kind of like fantasy sort of realm. My initial kind of thoughts at the beginning were Fire Emblem, um,
mm-hmm.
that kind of like style of universe. And Fire Emblem has great music, but then I don't know if Fire Emblem gets as dark. I guess maybe some of them do. Mm, It's very
Mm.
familiar. It's very, very familiar. I think I'm gonna kick myself on this one because I don't think it is Fire Emblem, but I'm having trouble thinking of what else it could be. It's a little like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's enough piano for it to be Final Fantasy.
Fair enough.
I don't think Clive's hanging out with me right now.
He
But
wishes he
yeah,
was when you fire up this game, that's for sure.
I'm gonna say it's a Fire Emblem because I can't get that out of my mind, but I'm confident that that is incorrect.
Okay. Well, you are incorrect. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you damn well are familiar with this song, though. You've played this a lot because this is the battle theme from, or one of the battle themes from Slay the Spire.
You know what's really funny about that is I have like 400 hours in Slay the Spire, and I think I've had music turned off for the last like 300 of them.
Yeah, that's probably one of the problems with picking this.
That's
Yeah.
probably what it is. Yeah. I would have heard this so much in like a short period of time, and then like never again because now Slay the Spire is like 100% of the time accompanied by like a video or like a
Mm-hmm.
podcast
Mm-hmm.
or like something else is going on.
Yeah, it is a great podcast game, but yeah, that is
Yeah, it
one
is.
of the main battle themes in Slay the Spire.
You know
So
what? Shout out to that. That's a really good track. And like that
yeah.
is the kind of game where like the music is nowhere near as important in a game like that than it is in a lot of more like action and like
Well,
time focused games.
yeah, I
So like
guess.
good for them for just going nuts on the soundtrack anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing a game for that long and you're sitting there like repeating
Yeah,
it over and over, like it has to have some kind of good soundtrack. I
I
think like
guess
it's what makes Balatro so good. Like the music, you get into this trance, and it's like
yeah.
it's part of what sucks you in. I think, but
I guess that's true. I'm thinking that a lot of people are probably like me and like don't have the sound on the whole time.
I'm sure
But
a
you're
lot
right.
are.
You're right that like it's definitely something, especially like depending where you're playing it. That yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because it would get annoying otherwise.
Anyway, yeah, good song. I thought you were gonna think it was God of War, honestly, because that first, like the first part of it, does kind of sound like maybe an older God of War, like before they kind of had the orchestrated,
Yeah,
amazing
that's true.
soundtrack.
Maybe in the original trilogy, but definitely
Mm-hmm.
it's not like deep
It's
enough
not full
for
enough for the new one.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's song 3. Let's go to song number 4. This is gonna be, if you're gonna get this one, you're gonna get it in about 5 seconds, or you're gonna be stuck. So let's go with number 4.
This is 100% the Contra that we had on the original Nintendo, and I almost feel like I recognize this easier than Dark Souls. That's not true. I think I got them at about the same speed. It's just that this is one distinct game for me and not a few games. But yeah,
Got it.
this is
Yeah.
100% Contra. I would risk a lot on this.
Contra on NES?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
Oh my god, is it a different Contra? That's the only Contra game I've ever played.
No,
No, it's Jackal. It's Jackal.
It's Jackal.
Oh.
This is Jackal, not
Jackal,
Contra.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Much lesser known.
The same game in my mind.
I know.
And like, yeah.
In my mind, those two games, Jackal and Contra, could have been like a twin cartridge, just like Duck Hunt and Mario Bros. Those were both so fun. But I didn't go with Contra because we played so much of it. I thought you'd played a little bit less Jackal, so this is Jackal.
Yeah,
and
I can think there's the plane that flies over, and then you're getting out of the Jeep. It's like da, 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 and you exit the vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
You switched your answer late, so I'll give you half a point. If you can tell me where in the game this song is from, you can have your full point.
I mean, this just sounds like when you turn the game on. This is the beginning. This is like getting into the mission, no? And like this is I associate this with people getting out of a vehicle.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? You're right. This is the first mission. It's not the title screen, but you know what? You're on the right track. That's a point for you. Good job, Kate. Good job.
Okay, thank you. I will bet anything on it that I will get it as suggested.
Okay, everybody. Let's move to the last song. This is song number 5.
This one, I have no idea. I was feeling something, and then the accordion came in.
Yes.
And I felt good about it, but I don't know. I was thinking like something like this seems like an indie game to me based on the music. I was thinking like Donut County, or like that one where like you falls through the hole. So I remember the music being
That's a fun
good in that
game. I don't like Donut County.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But I don't think the accordion threw me off of that. But it's definitely an indie game. I feel like that has to be the case. It's not Cassette Beast, which is a game I was thinking about earlier today and had an okay soundtrack.
They're gonna say had fond memories of, and it's like, well, that's true. Me too.
Yeah, it's a good game. It's kind of got like a seaside-y sort of feel to it. I think I know too many games by the sea. But like upbeat, like it can't be too serious. It's gotta be an indie game that's kind of chill. I'm gonna go, I guess, with Donut County because it's the first game I thought of, but I don't think that's right.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, you are not right. It is an indie game, though, so good guess on that. This is actually the main restaurant, the first restaurant level from Overcooked.
Oh, of course. Yes. Okay, that's very familiar now. Yes, of course it is.
Imagine chopping your tomatoes, making those pizzas.
Yes, chopping my tomato. Yeah, that's right. I put something in the oven and it's burning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you like drive a little car around. Yes, of course.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So
it's amazing how familiar they are once you're told what it is. Because
seriously.
Like, of course, I've listened to that for hours.
Yeah, going back to 3-star all those levels, make sure all those customers are happy. Like we played in that kitchen for a while. But yeah. Anyway, you did really well, because even those ones you got wrong, like you were very much on the right track. Maybe like Slay the Spire not as much, but even Wario Land 4, you're like Mario Party could be the same era of Nintendo. Like you were on the right track with an indie game, like the right feeling of the game. I think you did great.
I'm happy with what I did. I said I wanted to get 1 point, and with the speed of my correction, I have succeeded. I think it was 1.5 points. I think I ended up with.
No, I gave you the full point because you're. I think you got half point. We'll be generous.
For the Dark Souls.
Yeah, right? And then you get a full point. I gave you a full point for Jackal.
Yeah, so 1.5 points total.
Hey, that's like a 50% bump on your goal. So I mean.
Yeah, I think so, and maybe the best I've ever done in this game, despite like.
Is this one of the highest scores we've ever had? I think it is.
It's very possible. I've been literally going through all of my music on Spotify and like putting it into categories, and I have like a category that's like video game stuff, and like it is filling up. I listen to a lot of video game music, and like still even this is so hard.
Question for you then. Will any of these 5 songs make that video game music list?
Yeah, the Dark Souls 3 one's definitely on there.
Oh, now come on then.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, all of the other ones are too.
I think that Jackal track has to get on there. That's a great song.
Honestly, yeah, if that's on Spotify, that's going on there. And there's also an instrumental track or an instrumental playlist that it would also fit really well into.
Amazing.
Those are all really good tracks.
It was fun. This was fun. Well, let's hope that next time I can match at least 1.5 points. And yeah. Well, I hope you all had fun listening to the show today. I think that's going to close us out. Man, I can't wait to play more Diablo 4. Who knows what we're going to talk about on the show next time, but we might check in with how the online was for that, I guess. In any case, thank you all very much for listening. Let us know how you did on Good Listening. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So until then, this has been Cloud Control, the only podcast that's not just good, it's good enough. We'll see you next time. I messed that up. Okay, bye.